y'all ready to head off the trails? I'm the cryptid huntress, Jessica Jones. I'm fresh off the trails with my research team. I'm straight to SOR tonight, and I'm ready to take you guys on a mysterious journey right now. We welcome you to Off the Trails right here on the Spaced Out Radio's YouTube channel. If you guys haven't hit subscribe yet, please do. We would really appreciate the love. And shout out to Bumblefoot for that amazing intro music. We really appreciate it. All right, you guys can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio as well, and on Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show. All right, you guys can find me at thecryptidhuntress.com, and please subscribe to my amazing YouTube channel, The Cryptid Huntress. If you guys missed my shows this week on my YouTube channel, please, I urge you to go watch those. I had the best shows. That Jody Cook North American Dogman show on Wednesday. I'm telling you, it was the best Dogman show I've seen. I'm just going to go ahead and state that right now. Okay. So y'all go watch that. And of course, my remote viewing show on Thursday nights. Y'all go check that out, please. All right. If you guys would like to support what I do, please go to my shop, War Woman Goods on Etsy. And also I have a Patreon, The Cryptid Huntress. So y'all go become a member. I would love to have y'all. I have a fantastic guest here tonight. I'm so excited. I have Darrell Denton in the studio. But don't forget that right after this show, After Hours has a great program set up for us. Okay, so y'all check that out. And let's get to our guest tonight. Darrell Denton had his first cryptid encounter in his home state of Tennessee on November 6, 1992, which changed his life forever. The encounter was so intense, it kept him out of the woods and prevented him from hunting for the next 7 years. Then one day while fishing, Darrell had his second encounter. He is an experiencer and a researcher and has had numerous encounters over the years. In 2018, he befriended another family of forest people, but some members of that clan followed him home and terrorized his home and his farm for the next 4 months. Darrell researches currently and mostly at the Land Between the Lakes, the LBL, y'all, with his close friends, Martin Groves and friend of the show, Barton Nunnelly. And so I cannot wait to talk to Darrell tonight. Help me welcome to the show, Darrell Denton, everybody. Hey, Darrell.
Jessica, thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on the show with me. I have so looked forward to this. And I just love hearing your stories. So, and there's a lot I hadn't heard yet.
You've been so kind to have me. We've talked several times, been on a show or two together, Halloween show, and then with BMR also. I always enjoy being on with you. Thank you again.
Well, thank you. And I saw you moderating the other night. I was on the Blondes and Booze roundtable with Letitia, actually, and Nana Boss and the ladies from Blondes and Booze.
That was a good show. You did a great job. I enjoyed that show. I moderate for Blinds and Booze on Thursdays and Fridays, and they're very close friends of mine also. Every once in a while I co-host, but they're great people.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Darrell, I got to tell you, I just came in from being in the field with my research team. We've been out for the past couple of days, and this is an anniversary, actually, a big milestone for my research team. This is the 6th year anniversary of my team encountering a portal and us sending people into it. And so we went out and celebrated this week.
That's
and did some research where the portal was this week. So
that is pretty crazy. I've seen pictures of portals, but I've never been around one that I'm aware of. So that's kind of scary, isn't it? Because you actually stepped into it. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
We had it was a big cube that showed up in the middle of a field, and so you could only see it through a thermal or a night vision. And so we sent 2 guys over to go check it out. And when they got over to where the cube was, their heat signatures disappeared. Wow. And they said that the entire environment changed all around them. And so, it was a big deal.
Your team is still out there. Are you going back after the show?
No. No, I'm done. It's raining. It's raining cats and dogs over here. I'm not going back.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I am so tired. Listen, after you turn 40, I'm not going to say exactly how old I am, but my body's hurting from sleeping where I slept last night. The body just doesn't bounce back when you're sleeping on a cot or on a pallet.
You don't sleep good when you're out researching anyway. I mean, you just don't sleep good. So
Well, you don't
your
sleep.
mind's rolling constantly. You're trying to figure out if you're going to miss something. So,
Yeah.
or trying to stay
Yes.
alive, whichever one it may be. So,
Yes. Well, you and I both we go out with people who we feel safe with, and I think that's very important. Is to surround yourself with people who you're safe with, spiritually, energetically, physically, all that. Um,
that's very
yeah.
true. One of my friends is really he hadn't seen a cryptid in a long time because he kind of rebuked them back in 2007 or 8. And then
Okay.
one of my other friends, he's like me. He seems to attract to him like a magnet. So it's kind of crazy. I don't even understand how that works. At certain times, it seems like they just find me. I don't even have to look. But then I have those nights where I don't see anything. But I mean, it's not every time. But it's more often than not. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? A lot of times we get zero activity out in the field, and this week actually we did get some good activity uh, of different things. It was just odd, paranormal kind of stuff. Like we were actually able to see each other's auras, where when we stood where the portal had been,
that's
and
great.
we had we were testing the radiation, and Chuck, who's in chat, was asking, "Step into a portal. Where did they go?" Well, luckily they came back out of the portal before they went anywhere.
Yeah, you're
So
back anyway, so you didn't get
yeah.
lost. So
Yeah, they came back, and it was just they didn't know they were had gone anywhere because they couldn't see it. But their heat signatures disappeared off of the cameras, and then they said that it was like stepping into a black curtain, a black velvet
wow,
curtain, and the temperature changed, the stars disappeared from the sky, and the vegetation changed on the ground to smooth from being briars and
wow,
brushy.
really?
Yeah.
I've had plenty of discussions, and especially with my good friend Barton Nunnelly, he thinks it's radiation, the
It
zapping type
is.
thing that I've been what they call zapped a couple of times by the forest people or the Bigfoot, and one time with a
Okay.
dog man. But
Really?
I've only seen two dog men, but my second occurrence, oh yeah, it was pretty bad. But did y'all detect the radiation the other night?
Yes, we did. We've detected radiation there. Yeah, in the same
Wow.
spot. There's and but here's the thing, every time that we have paranormal activity out there, we have spikes of radiation, just small ones.
Okay.
But today we were getting some pretty nice little spikes there though.
Well, a lot of
Um,
people think they call it infrasound, and I can't really put
mhm.
an infrasound together with having that kind of strength of what it's actually done to me. So, but I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I surely don't know everything. So,
Yeah, I know I don't know nothing about nothing. I tell you,
I don't
the more I'm
either.
out there learning, the less I know, to be honest. But we're trying to figure these things out, and it is
Definitely.
true. There was a lot of radiation. It seemed like a little bit of radiation was involved, but what's interesting is both men who went into the portal both got pretty bad health problems after that
Really.
experience. Yeah, so it's something we have to look out for as researchers.
That's pretty.
Um,
I've never known anybody that's actually went into a portal and come out. I mean, that's a story of the first of kind there. So, and
yeah,
what did the
yeah.
portal actually look like? Was it just like a big tunnel like thing, or because
Mhm.
I've seen pictures, but I've never actually seen one myself. So,
Yeah, this was naked to the eye. You could not see it at all except
oh
for
really?
through the temperature changed in the thermal. Yeah, you could that's the only
Wow,
way you could see it. And so there was nothing there. Nothing. But
wow.
there was something there. So
Yeah,
that's why you had to be very careful. And it was shaped like a box.
it's like a
A
cube.
cube. A cube. Yeah, it was a
Wow.
cube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd always heard they were around. So there again, like I
Mm-mm.
said, I've never seen one in person. But
Yeah, because you think about the round thing like
yeah,
Doctor
they really do.
Strange has,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It wasn't anything like that. Yeah.
Nothing like
So
what we've heard anyway. So yeah, it's
right. Well, and we were kind of I was doing some dowsing and stuff, and I was asking some questions about if it was like transportation. Maybe this is where cryptids come and go, and I think that's kind of what it's used for. But we were picking up on more of an extraterrestrial kind of background to it and all that kind of stuff. But you've experienced. families of Sasquatch or forest people, as you call them, and even Dogman and stuff. And that's really what I'd like to talk with you about tonight, Darrell,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
your stories go way back. I mean, back to 92. You know,
Yeah.
I might have been in high school back then. You know,
Well, I'm probably a little older than you are.
just maybe a little tiny bit,
So,
but
you know,
not by much.
no, I'm not. I don't know about that now. I don't get into age, but it doesn't matter to me anyway. As long as we're here and safe, we're all good.
We're having fun. It don't
That's
matter. Age
exactly
is just a
right.
number.
That's true. Yeah, you better feel that way the older you get. You know, so that's for sure.
I feel like I'm 80 now that I camped out last night, and I'm like,
After you slip on a rock all night, you're a little bit
feel
stiff.
like
So
it.
I understand. Yeah, but
Yeah.
where would you like me to start at? Just
Well, I'd like to start maybe the first time you had an experience when you were
okay.
younger, maybe
All
that
right.
first experience. And I'd like to hear about your two different experiences with Sasquatch and the families,
Okay.
the
Well,
family clan ones.
my first experience happened on my grandfather's farm, and I've told this story many a time. So for those of you out there that's heard it, I apologize for listening to it again. But you know, it was on my grandfather's farm in Cannon County, Tennessee, and I had pretty much hunted on that farm, camped on it by myself with my cousins, whoever. You know, I grew up on that pretty much on that farm. I was never scared of anything out in that area. So every year, me and three of my good friends went up there to my grandfather's, and I had a 30-foot camper back then. I pulled behind my truck. And we took our four wheelers. We all had four wheelers, and we would set up at my grandfather's barn and camp there. And we would, of course, go out our different ways in the morning and go to our deer stands. And we had some stands built. And we also had some climbing stands. But we've been there probably the previous 4 years, and we always went on the opening week of black powder, which is muzzleloader season, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's you can only shoot a buck only. Buck is a male deer, and that's what you can shoot. So this particular year, I had asked my grandfather that I said, where would be the best place to go to get a large deer, and he was on his back porch, and he pointed and said, "You see that third hollow? Go there." And the other side of it, there's an old grist mill, what's left of it, and an old house that I was born in that probably nothing left but the roof by now. And he was 92 years old at that time, and he was in great health. And anyway, so I took his word for it. So that particular day was the day before the opening season, and I walked over that way, and he had to go through a gate behind his house that went into a field where his cattle were. He had cows, and there was a lot of sage grass, probably about 200 yards wide, and it went all the way over to a wood line. And then there was a barbed wire fence that was a newer one that wasn't broken down like a couple other ones I had to cross. And you crossed that, and you went over a really steep hill. It was close to 40, 45 degrees straight up, like some of the hills are in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And you get over the top of that, and then you went down the bottom of that one, then over the next one. And when you got to the third one, you were about time to take a break, and it was about a 45-minute walk. I remember it very well. And I went over that hill and went down to the bottom, and there was a large creek there. Well, it wasn't large, but it was maybe 10 foot wide. You know, it ran all year round. It wasn't a real deep creek, but it ran all year round. And I walked around the edge of the creek, and I found a tree on the left side of the hill. And I had a climbing stand on my back, and a climbing stand is what you unscrew with a wing nut and you put around the tree and have a climber. And then you also have the actual stand itself in that you set in. You do the same thing, and you climb up the tree. And when you sit down in it, it puts pressure on the tree. It digs into the bark, and it's pretty stationary. And you also have, of course, a safety strap that you tie to yourself. And I went up the tree and found a spot and trimmed off a few limbs and got ready for the next day, came back down. And crossed the creek and looked for some signs, and I found a real nice game trail on the other side of the creek. And there was a lot of acorns, and there was a tree there that had a limb that was probably about 10 foot, and I jumped up and grabbed it, and I tied what's called a drag rag that you put behind your boot, and you drag that through the woods when you're going in, and it covers up your scent, and a buck deer can smell that. And I hung that on the tree limb, and then I headed back out and went back to my grandfather's house, and I told him I went out to my friends and I camped in the camper with him. And I said, wake me up when you get up. And he always got up about 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. And
early start.
Early start,
yeah.
My friends, they probably wouldn't get in the woods till 6, but I had a real good walk. So he came down and knocked on the camper and got me up, and I headed that way. And I remember getting over to the going through his back behind his house, and I crossed the first barbed wire fence, and I started going up the hill, and I got just about halfway up, and I heard something walking to the left of me, and I stopped and I listened, and I shined a flashlight in the direction. I didn't see anything, so I went on up a little further, and got on up to the top of the hill, and I heard it again. And I shined the flashlight again, and I started thinking that, there couldn't be somebody here hunting, because my grandfather wouldn't have anybody on his property hunting. But it kind of sounded like, bipedal footsteps, but I didn't think much more about it. So I crossed the next hill and got to the bottom of that one, and there was an old barbed wire fence I crossed. You could just step across it. And time I got to the third hill and down the side of the third hill toward my stand, I heard the walking on top of the hill to my left, and it was pretty loud. These were leaves on the ground that time of year. All the leaves were off the trees. There was a lot of regular leaves on the ground, and they make a crunching noise, and you could hear something walking pretty good. And I kept shining the light, and I never seen anything. So I was a little bit nervous about that, because I didn't think, well, who's in here hunting?
Trespassers.
So,
trespassers, man.
That's what I was thinking. Somebody had sneaked in. They were going to hunt over there. So, but anyway, I got on around and I followed the creek because it was dark. I wasn't real familiar with that area. Followed the creek around, found my stand. And about the time I got my stand, I heard it again, but it was still up on the hill to the left of me. And I went ahead and got up my stand pretty quick and got up there and got set. And I had a little blind that pulled out in front of me it's kind of like a camo that covers your legs from about your waist up, about from almost to your neck down, and it keeps you concealed. And I always had this blackout up under my eyes because the sun would glare in them. And I was just sitting there waiting for daylight. And, pretty much by that time, it was fairly close to daylight by the time I got up there. I could see a little bit of light, but it was still dark. And I sat there for a while, and about daylight that morning, there was some fog over the creek that morning. I remember seeing that. And I was trying to think, what would be the best way to turn. And so I kind of turned straight and in my stand, and I had my gun leaning against the bar, and these deer came out, and that was probably around 7:30 or so that morning. They crossed. There was a large cane thicket, if you know what cane looks like on riverbanks, tall, green-looking cane. There was a real large,
almost like bamboo. Yeah,
it is. It really is. It was to the left of me, and it went all the way down the side of that creek for a long way. And it was real tall. I'm guessing 12, 15 foot tall. And the deer had came out somewhere in that area, and they just walked through the creek, walked up on the bank, and on that game trail right above there. And there was 3 of them. There was one larger than the other 2. And they just kind of milled around in the leaves, and they were eating acorns and walking around, and just like deer do. And I watched them for probably 30, 45 minutes maybe. And they weren't spooked, and they didn't see me, and they were just acting like normal deer. And And I was just watching them and looking for maybe a buck to come in or following them. And um, I, the lead deer all of a sudden was facing to my left, was facing actually to my left. And the other two, one was kind of to the right of it, one was kind of to the left of it behind it. And all of a sudden, the lead deer stuck her ears up and just looked straight toward that cane thicket. And I looked at the other two, and they did the same thing. And I mean, they were just like frozen, staring in that area. And my first thought, well, okay, there's a big buck that's fixing to come out of that area over there, and I really couldn't see. There was a little ravine there in between it. I really couldn't see on the other side of the cane area, but I just kept sitting there trying to figure out what they were looking at, and then all of a sudden they turned to the right. The front deer stuck her nose up and blew real loud. A deer will make a blowing sound, and looked in that direction again, and then just turned, and they all three took off running to my right, across in front of me, like somebody had shot at them. I mean, like they were just scared to death. I didn't really know what was going on because you rarely see deer take off running like that unless somebody walks in on them or they do shoot at them. So
Yeah.
they took off running, and I sit there and I'm thinking, well, there's a big buck about to come out of this somewhere over here to the left of me. And it was probably 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. And then I seen the cane in the middle of it. I could see it moving in the top. It was pushing against it. Something was coming through, and you could see the very top of the cane moving. It was moving pretty good. I was kind of thinking,
Yeah.
wow, this thing must be huge. I didn't really know what was going on, but
Yeah, you were getting lucky about to get a big old buck.
oh yeah,
The first few hours of
you get
the morning.
excited, you're ready to get out there and get one. That was the thing about hunting. So,
Yeah.
I had gotten deer before, but never one like I was looking for. But anyway, the cane kept moving, and it kept getting closer to the front, and I was trying to see what it was, and I couldn't see it. It was so thick in there, and wow! Then all of a sudden, this thing stepped out, and I was just like, I was looking. I just couldn't even believe what I was looking at. And it took one leap, and it leaped from the edge of that creek to the other side and landed. And when it landed, I was like, what is this? I was just in shock. I can't even tell you. I actually did not know I had fear in me like that, but it was something else. And it walked down that game trail, and it walked almost about face to me. It was looking right at me, straight ahead, and it was probably about 8 foot tall. It was black. It stopped, and it looked at me, looked right in my eyes. He knew exactly where I was at. And
Oh.
the first thing it did was it showed me its teeth, and it gritted its teeth and showed me its teeth. And I can't tell you, like I said, I don't get scared easy, but it was it was the most scared I'd ever been. And when first of all, I couldn't believe it. I was seeing it because I didn't think anything like that were in the woods. So, but it looked at me, and then it let out a real deep growl, like it was really, really mad that I was there. And by that
You were
time,
going to take its food source. That's what you were doing.
by that time, I had my hand on my gun, and I was thinking in my mind, if I've got one shot with this 50 caliber muzzle loader, and I don't believe it's going to kill this thing. So I was kind of froze and really didn't know what to do, and it was still staring at me. And then it walks over to the tree where I had the rag hanging in the tree, and it pulls it down and smells of it. And then it reaches up and grabs the limb it was on and just rips it completely out of the tree, the whole limb, and throws it on the ground. Well, by that time, I was in a major panic because I thought, well, this thing's going to cross the creek and come up this stand and just get me. So
Oh, yeah.
I really didn't know what to do. I was as scared as I've ever been, and actually couldn't even hardly breathe. I was so scared. I was just frozen. And then it let out a growl, again. And I thought, well, this is it, and just a few seconds later, it let out a yell, a scream like I've never heard to this day, not even on, what I've heard from people's recordings. I've never heard one like this. It was so loud and it echoed all down that hollow. And I thought, well, this is it right here. And it just looked at me, and then it just turned around and just walked away toward the brush and the trees. But and I watched it walk away. And when it got just about out of sight, I knew that I wasn't going to take time to climb down with a stand. And I was trying to make my mind up what to do, because it takes about 15 minutes to come down the tree in that stand.
Wow.
So I just jumped.
You jumped?
I was probably 25 feet up, and I just jumped I pulled the bar down in front, and I just jumped. And when I hit the ground, I had my gun in my arm and my hand, and I hit the leaves, and I slid all the way down into the creek. And I got up, looked back, I didn't see it, and I took off running to the right around the creek bank there. And I went over the top of the first hill as fast as I could run, and I kept looking back to the left of me, and I didn't see it. And when I got over the top of that first hill, and I got started on the down toward the bottom of the second hollow and up on the second hill, I was about halfway up, and I looked back. I kept looking behind me because I thought it was going to come after me. And it was standing on top of the hill. Now, I don't know if it was the same one to this day or not. It could have been another one, but it was standing up there looking at me. And then I just kept running, and I crossed the top of the second hill. And by the time there was a couple little barbed wire fences you had to cross in between those two hollows, but they weren't tall enough you couldn't step over them because they had been used in a long time. And by the time I got to the bottom of the third hill, I was running about as fast as I could in that day and time.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
And I jumped that barbed wire fence, and I'll never forget, I caught the bottom of my pants leg and just ripped it all the way up to my knee and tore a big gash in my leg. And I didn't even feel it. I just kept running. And when I got to the edge of that sage grass, I was still looking back, as often as I could. And I got across the sage grass and went through that gate and ran into my grandfather's house, the back door. And I went in and slammed the door and locked it. And I was looking out the glass, and I went to the right. It went into the living area where he sat. And I went running in there and just sat down in the right front corner. And my grandfather had a huge pot-bellied stove in there with firewood in it. And he was sitting in his rocking chair in front of it. And I sat down in the corner, and I was just completely out of breath. And I'd get up and look out the window and make sure this thing wasn't coming. And my granddad he'd never called me by my name, and me and my granddad were super close. I lived with him until I was about 6 years old, and him and my grandma. And he said, "Boy," he always called me boy. He said, "Boy, what's wrong with you?" And I said, "I don't know, Granddad. I seen a monster in the woods." He said, "A monster? What are you talking about?" And I said, "It was this huge thing about 8 foot tall, and it was black and probably weighed 800 to 1,000 pounds. And it was showing me its teeth and growling at me, and it screamed." And he said, "Oh, you seen a wood booger?" And I said, "A what?"
Oh, he knew about them.
He said, "Yeah, you seen a wood booger." I said, "Well, what is a wood booger?" And he said, "Well, they're the old people." And when he used the term old people, it was, his ancestors, his parents and uncles. He called them the old people. He said they called them the wood booger. And he says, "Oh, boy, they won't hurt you." He said, "I didn't want to tell you about them." And I said, "Well, I wish you had of." And he said, "Well, I've seen 4 of them in my lifetime, close." And he said, "I've heard a lot more than that." And he said, "They've lived around here for years." And he said, "You was probably in its territory, probably messing up his area for his deer." And I said, "Well, I wish you'd have told me before I went over there." And he said, "Well, I didn't want to tell you because, you grew up here and you've always camped in the woods and hunted and stayed in the hayloft at night with your friends." And so regular stuff us farm boys did growing up. And And I said, well, I wish I'd have known about it because I'd have never went over there. And I kept looking
Yeah.
out the windows, and he says, boy, you're white as a ghost. And I said, well, I feel like I'm a ghost right now. And he went and got something for me, and I put it on my leg. I was trying to get it to stop bleeding. But it was craziest thing I ever seen. It absolutely terrified me. And he said, well, the thing about these things, he said, they actually come to the my grandfather had a big chicken house on the left of his house, and he had a lot of chickens. I don't remember exactly how many, but it was a lot of them. And he sold eggs like farmers do and that type of thing. And he said in the wintertime they come to the chicken house and they take a few chickens. I said, they come to the chicken house and take your chickens? He said, yeah, they'll take some chickens and they don't bother anything. And they leave me a little pile of sticks and rocks like they're paying for it. And I said, I don't know how I never heard this story before. He says, well, you remember your grandma used to tell you to get in the house at night because the booger man would get you. Well, that's the booger man. I said, well, they
The
exist.
Booger Man. That's
Yeah.
right. We have booger hollers here in Georgia. There's a place
Oh,
up in
yeah.
Rome called Booger Holler,
We
and
got several booger hollers.
yeah,
Yeah.
it gives it a new meaning to me now because I know that a booger is a Bigfoot.
Well,
Yeah,
there's a lot of different type of Bigfoot, but that one
that's
was
true.
definitely the meanest one that I've ever seen. So it being my first one too, I'm sure I probably felt a little different about it than some people would. But I actually looked it
Yeah.
up after I started looking up this stuff. After I'd left, I went out to talk to my friends when they came back from their hunt, and one of them had got a deer. We always got a deer there every year, and they were out there skinning out a deer, and I went out and talked to them at the camper, and I just kind of nonchalantly, I'm still a nervous wreck, and I said, "Hey guys, y'all never seen anything since we've been hunting here, have you?" And I never forget, Scott said, "What are you talking about?" They always call me Big D. Everybody did. They said, "What are you talking about, Big D?" I said, "Like maybe a Bigfoot or some kind of creature in the woods." And they all looked at me and went, what'd you have to drink last night? Did you drink more than we did? And I said, no. And they started laughing about it. So I didn't say anything else about it. But
I don't blame you.
it was pretty frightening. And I actually stayed in the house with my grandfather the rest of the week I was there. I didn't stay in the camper. But I didn't want to ruin their hunt. So I just let it go. But
And
it
then
was,
you didn't go back hunting again after that
oh my
for
gosh.
7 years, right?
It might have been a little less or a little longer, but it was, I had nightmares for a long time about that thing, and and it actually kept me where I still don't sleep like I used to, but
Yeah.
I don't have nightmares about it anymore. Sometimes I still get the feeling I had then, but not like that. That was definitely a life changing experience. I always thought that Bigfoot lived in the Northwest, Oregon,
Mhm.
California, British
Me
Columbia,
too.
Washington,
Yeah.
that area. I never had a clue that there was one in Tennessee. So it was very shocking. And when my grandfather told me he knew all about them, made it even worse because,
It
it
did,
wasn't like
right?
it wasn't like anything to him. It was just a wood booger. Well, it wasn't just a wood booger to me. It was pretty terrifying. But
Well, but at some point you started kind of exchanging gifts with them, and I've heard your story about the whistles.
well,
That's
it
a little
was
creepy,
I
actually.
really went. I'll tell you what I did at first. I started going to the library because, in 1992, we didn't really have cell phones. I didn't anyway. So I didn't really know. I didn't have any way to look it up. You couldn't Google anything or whatever.
Right.
And I went to the library and started looking through books. And I actually went to several libraries. And I can't remember the name, but I found two or three in books of like 10 different type of what they called Bigfoot creatures. And
Hmm.
that's why number two was listed as the wood booger, and that's exactly what it looked like, except it didn't have black eyes. It had more of a white eye with a black center. But it was
Wow.
the meanest looking thing that I've ever seen to this day. Well, until last October, I'd seen something that was worse than that. But that was definitely never seen another one like that. I've never seen another wood booger in my years of I don't actually call myself a researcher. I call myself an experiencer because
Hmm.
I don't believe that you ever find Bigfoot. I believe he finds you. So I do believe some people are more prone to find these animals, and I think they're actually a type of people. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Some people would disagree with me, and I'm sure no expert at anything, but
Yeah.
it's just my own prior experiences and what I've been through. I feel like some of them are. I know they're different. I've seen three different types in my
Okay.
years, but and the second one, it was by complete accident. I really wasn't researching. I was.
Mhm.
It was about 7 years later, probably in '99, and because that went on to about 2001. I was actually at a place on the Cumberland River in Tennessee that I fished a lot, and it was behind behind a sewer plant, a water sewer treatment plant.
Mhm.
I'd park there in that parking lot, and I'd walk about 200 or 300 yards back in behind it on this trail, and it was mainly a real growed up area. It had a lot of like ivy and that type stuff back there. It was real thick, and
Kudzu.
whatever you call it, you probably
I
that's probably what it's
call it
called.
kudzu.
Okay, but I'd walked back there, and I've been fishing there for years. I mean, probably since I was 14 years old, I would go fishing there. But this particular day, I went back there, and I was by myself, and I fished there a lot by myself, and that area when you get back there, it opens up and it's a one little clearing between that and where it gets real thick again. The trail continues to go back in there, but you almost have to get on your knees to get through there. And but you can see the game trail going through there. And a lot of deer back in there also. But
Yeah.
um, I had brought my styrofoam minnow bucket. I fished for minnows down there, and had went in there with my equipment, and I set up, and I was actually fishing. I just got set up and I was fishing, and the way that's set up, there's a bank that kind of drops off about 5 or 6 foot, and it's got a lot of like roots and stuff sticking out of it, and you have to walk down it and go out on a little sandbar that goes out into the river. And
Uh-huh.
then you don't get all hung up with trying to reel your fish in. So I'd walk down there, and I'd caught a fish, and I went down to get it, and I come back up to the bank and sat down. I'd brought a 5 gallon uh, bucket that I carried my stuff in, and I sat on it when I was fishing, and went back to put a minnow on, and my minnow bucket was gone. And I got to looking for my
Uh-oh.
minnow bucket, and I looked to the left and the right and went down toward the river, and I couldn't find my bucket anywhere. I thought, well, how could this happen? Somebody's playing a joke on me, somebody that I know. And I had a few friends that went back there with me on occasion, but not many people knew that spot was there, and they wouldn't allow you to go back there unless you knew somebody that was at the water plant, water and sewer treatment plant, and I knew the guys that worked there. Uh, and they let me park behind it and go through the gate to the spot. But I couldn't find the minnow bucket, and I didn't have any minnows, so I didn't know what happened to it. So I left. I got all my stuff and went on back, and I was, went back, and it was probably a week or two later. Might have been that next weekend. I don't remember the exact time frame, but I came back with another minnow bucket and went back to the same spot, but this time the water was up. It had rained a lot, and the water
Yeah.
was up higher, and you couldn't get right to the spot. Not as far. You couldn't get to the sandbar because it was underwater. So you just had to fish from the spot I was at and just try to reel it in instead of going out there. And this day, pretty much the same thing. I'd caught 2 or 3 fish this time though, and I'd been there for a good while. And I caught one, and I went down and it got hung up a little bit, and I got it loose and came back up. My minnow bucket was gone again.
Oh my God! Somebody stole 2 buckets of minnows, and those things aren't cheap. If you went and
Well, they're
bought them,
just styrofoam buckets, but the minnows are
what a
more
pain in the
expensive.
butt.
The minnows are more expensive than the bucket, but
Yeah.
it was. I thought, well, somebody's playing a joke on me. One of my buddies is in here, and they're taking my buckets, and so I got to looking around. There's actually a train track behind that, and I got to walking up in that area and looking, and about that time it already had started to storm a little bit. The wind was blowing pretty hard, and it had been raining for days, and the water was up high. And I thought, well, maybe the wind blew my minnow bucket in the river. And I got to looking around the river, and of course, a styrofoam minnow bucket's not going to sink. So, and it was kind of strong current, and I never did find that minnow bucket either. So, I got my stuff together and went on to the house again. And so I guess it was another week or so when I was back in there. And this time though, I had a string about, I don't know, 10 or 15 foot long, and I tied it to the metal handle to the minnow bucket. And
you're not losing that bucket.
I'm not losing this.
You learned your
Figure out
lesson.
what's going on. So I went in and I set up in the same spot. The water was back down again. I could see the sandbar. And I tied a string around the tree next to where I was sitting, and it was tied to the minnow bucket. So if something happened, I could find it. And I'd been catching quite a few fish, and was actually having a pretty good day that day. And I went down to get a fish on the sandbar and come back, and I looked for my minnow bucket, and the string between the tree and the trail going down in where it got real thick, the bucket was pulled tight. The string was tight. The bucket was down the trail a little way. And I said, okay, well, now I know at least where they're coming from. They're coming from the thick area there. So I went down the trail a little ways, and it wasn't very far in. And I seen the minnow bucket, and water had splashed out of it. And I looked in the minnow bucket. There was only one minnow left. And I thought, well, I had I don't remember what I had, probably 5 or 6 dozen. There was only one left. So I thought that was pretty strange. So I kind of bent over and kind of went down the trail a little ways. And over to the left is is a minnow bucket laying in the grass and the ivy. What did you call it again? The
kudzu. It's
That's what it
kudzu.
was. That's what it was. So, and then
That's what we call it in Georgia.
Well, it may be called the same thing. We're awful close, Georgia and Tennessee. So I walked down a little further, and you had to bend down kind of low, and there was another minnow bucket. So I'm thinking, well, there's both the minnow buckets that I lost before.
Those are your buckets.
There's my buckets. So I picked them both up, and I walked back to the bucket, and right next to the bucket, it's real muddy in there anyway. It makes an easy track. And right next to the bucket, there was a pretty good sized footprint without it, like a regular person looking foot, but it wasn't a shoe print. It was a footprint. And there was a couple
barefoot.
of yeah, barefoot.
Bare feet.
And I started thinking, oh no, don't tell me this is what I'm thinking it is. So that was the first thing in my mind. Here I'm running into these things again. That's what I started thinking. I said, because surely there's not anybody in here, and in February and the half cold weather, and it's kind of cold in Tennessee that time of year, barefooted, running up and down the river. So I got to looking down in there, and I didn't see anything, but I seen the tracks. And so I just went back and sat on my bucket, and I was just acting like I was fishing, but I wasn't fishing. I was just really watching to the left. And all of a sudden I seen this little one down the trail, probably maybe 50 feet. And it had its hands around a tree, and I could see one leg, the left leg, stuck out, and it was doing this.
Oh,
and it wasn't very big. It wasn't very big. I'm guessing 3.5, 4 foot tall, but it was looking at me, and I would move a little bit, and it would duck back into the bush, and I would just keep staring in there, and it would look out again. And at that point, I had a lot of things going through my mind. I didn't know if I wanted to be around these things again, but this one didn't look like the wood bucket. This one looked more like the patty type face, the regular looking head type. It didn't look nothing like the first one I'd seen. And it was black, but it was little. It wasn't real big. And I started thinking, well, I don't know if I want to stick around here or not, because there may be some bigger ones, and they may not be as friendly as this one. So
that's true.
I got all my stuff together and headed on out. And I thought about this pretty much every day, since I left there, I'm thinking, well, am I going to go fishing down there again or what? And I thought about it and thought about it. And I said, okay, I'm going to go down there. So I got my stuff together. So it was probably about 3 weeks from that time that I was there. And this time I carried my shotgun with me, just in case. I didn't know what was in there, but I was gonna be getting out pretty quick if it was one of them that like I'd seen before. So I got down there and I had no intention of fishing. I was just there for that one, but I act like I was fishing. I got all my stuff set up, my normal thing, and
You're trying to outsmart them.
Trying to outsmart them, and you can't outsmart them. You're right about that because they know what you're thinking.
That's right.
And
they can get in your head.
They can get in your head. They can read your intentions.
That's right.
It's amazing the abilities they have, and I hear people all the time saying, "Well, you can outsmart them." I don't think you can ever outsmart them, but
no,
they're very intelligent.
I don't think so either.
Super intelligent. They're really elusive. They're very curious. But when I went in this time, I set all my stuff up and I just kept watching down that path. And I was probably there about an hour, and I seen the little one again. He was doing that again, looking out like that. And I thought, well, there's one of them, the one I probably seen before. I don't know if it was the same one, but it looked like it was about the same size. And it was probably a little longer than that. And I seen another one about maybe a little bigger than him, and he was behind that one, and he was doing that. Both of them were doing it. And
wow.
And I started thinking, well, I've got my gun next to the tree, and they haven't tried to charge me or attack me, so I'm not going to fire on them or anything. So I watched them for a while, and they watched me, and I was probably down there 2 or 3 hours. I really wasn't very nervous, surprisingly, because I really didn't feel fear toward them. They didn't seem like the one I'd seen at first. They were more curious about me. So I just watched them, and that was the only two that I'd seen that day. And I finally, right about dark, I left, and I could hear more of them in there, moving around. Well, I could hear something in there. I guess it was more of them, but there was some other ones moving around in there anyway. But
well, and so you became friends, kind of befriended a clan of them, almost like a family.
They were actually really good to me. They were like my friends to me. I had a whole different feeling about them, and I started going down there pretty much every other day, and I would sit and look at them, and I didn't always see them, but most of the time I'd see at least one. But I started announcing I was coming when I started going in. I just started thinking, well, if I tell them I'm coming, what if it makes any difference? And I'd be walking down the trail, and I'd say, well, I'm here. I hope you guys are here today. I'd just normal talk, and I'd go in and sit down, and they would let me look at them, and they'd look at me, and it was kind of crazy, really. I really didn't know what to think of it, but I felt more. I probably would have never changed my feeling about these things if that hadn't happened to me. So,
right,
because it really released all that stress I had from worrying about, one of them trying to attack or be aggressive. So, but and it looked different too, so that made a difference. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it's you said I have not heard this story yet, and we have a few minutes left. But at some point, they kind of came in and started terrorizing your farm. What happened there, and how did you resolve that issue? Is my question.
Well, that was quite a few years later. This particular bunch at the river was not those, but I'll make this story quick because I don't want to take up a lot of time on it. But I just kept going in.
I started about thinking, 6 minutes.
Okay, 6 minutes. Oh goodness, sorry.
Yeah, it flew by, right? Yeah, we only have an hour.
It really did.
Here, but
yeah,
it's okay.
But,
I'm gonna bring you back, Darrell.
I guess
don't be sorry. This is amazing.
But anyway, I come up with the idea of taking them some gifts, and I brought them. I actually started off with apples and bananas like anybody would, because at that time I didn't know that they were apes or what they were, and they didn't seem to like that very much. And I found out
Yeah.
that they really liked. I took all kinds of stuff, and they pretty much like cantaloupes. They love cantaloupes. They loved fried bacon. They loved jelly-filled donuts. So that was
Oh,
the
they
three
really?
favorite foods that they liked the most. And I made a little box, little platform box, and put it in a tree where the regular, critters couldn't get them. But and they would get it out, and when I'd go in to be gone, they made me gifts, and I really kind of befriended those, and I never seen more than three of them. I heard other ones back in there, but long story. I'm trying to get through the show here without finishing this story, but I come up with an idea. One day I was at a little five and dime place, and I took them some plastic whistles. I thought, well, I wonder what they'll do if I carry these in there. And these were little plastic whistles, had a little black string on them, and I hung them on limbs, and it was pretty neat. I hung them on limbs all around the area I was in, and the next time I went in, I would go in. Hey, I'm here. How are y'all doing today? And I could hear these whistles. It was hilarious. I would hear a whistle to the left, one back deep. I hear one across the river. So there was about 10 whistles in that pack, and
That's
apparently
crazy.
they
I
knew how
love
to.
that.
They apparently knew how to use them because they were blowing them everywhere. So, and now they only did it when I went in. They wouldn't do it the whole time I was there. But
Wow.
that was like they were letting me know, hey, yeah, here we are, But it was
Maybe that was like their way to communicate with you. Like they thought maybe that was, they knew that
you
you
know,
know that was them.
it was really sad because I went through that for a good 2.5 years, and I really did enjoy visiting them. And
Mhm.
I went in there one day. I actually had to work, and it was probably about 3 weeks. I normally went about every 2 days before I could get back in there, and I was real worried about them. And I took one of my friends there, and he got so scared that he ran all the way back to the car. He didn't want to see them, and
Mhm.
but the sewer company and the water plant there added on to the facility. I didn't know they were going to do that. I went in there like couple 2 or 3 weeks later, and that whole area was leveled. They had dozers
Oh,
in there and backhoes, and it had like
oh no.
footers and little stakes up where they were going to build something there. And I spent more than a year there, going back deeper in, yelling for them and looking for them, and I never seen them again. I don't know what
Oh.
happened to them. So I don't know if they came in and euthanized them, or they ran off, or what happened to them. But
Oh no.
never seen them again. That was pretty much.
Hopefully they migrated. Hopefully they
I,
went somewhere.
I hope so. I went back
Yeah.
in there a lot further on that trail. I mean, probably a mile, and I never got any sign of them. So I don't know what happened to them. I've always wondered what happened to them.
Oh,
That was pretty much the my second time of being around, that type, what I call force people. So,
yeah. Well that ended on a good note. I mean, and not a good note that they disappeared, but
well, I've always worried about the whistles because
yeah.
after the years that went by, I thought, well, maybe those whistles, people found them because of the whistle.
Yeah.
It might have cost them their life, or I don't really don't know what happened to them, but I wish I did today. So, but
Yeah.
they're not there anymore. I know that.
Oh, well, I hope that well it's not that you might ever see them again, but you still get out in the field and you do research at the LBL, and that's a place that comes up pretty often that I talk about. I have not been there yet, but you've had Dogman experiences and things like that. And I know we don't have time to talk about all that tonight. I'm going to absolutely bring you back on, Darrell. Please, people in the audience in the live chat are saying, please bring Darrell back.
Well, I mean, I appreciate all the people thinking that. I hope they like the story, and I enjoyed telling it. I appreciate you having me on, Jessica. I always enjoy being with you anyway. You're a lot of fun, so
Thank
thank you so
you.
much.
Well, I like to have fun myself, and
I know you do. Yeah,
I do, and
yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
researcher too, and I get out and like I said, I was just out this week with my team, and we do have a lot of fun, and it's fun to be able to trade stories back and forth, and we understand each other, Darrell,
Well,
in a lot of ways.
anybody that's into experiencing, which I call it instead of researching, I think that you do have The good thing about the cryptid world or the Bigfoot world, forest people, most of the people are such good people anyway. You really don't run into too many bad ones. So,
That's right.
but
Absolutely.
I would like to say a shout out to a couple of my friends if you don't mind, and
Please, yeah, go for it.
Barton and the Fish and Nunnelly. I got my humanoid shirt hanging up. My closest friend, to Martin Groves. He's writing his second book. Jeremiah Fountain, think the world of him, and Blinds and Booze, of course, they're always out there with me. So
Those are all my friends too, Darrell. Shout
very
out
good
to all of
people,
them.
and Joe and Jesse at Hellbent Holler, love those guys at F2. So, but thanks
Yes.
for having me on. I'll be glad to come on again and try to finish up my third story, whatever you need me to do. But,
yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. And Darrell, we got to tell everybody about your Facebook group because I'm a part of it.
You're one of my experts on there.
Yeah.
You're great. It's Bigfoot believers and other creatures. We're the fastest scoring group in Facebook history, but not because of me, because of all my good people. So I have some great
Yes.
people on there, moderators, experts, and just great members too. So all those people invite people every day, and it's pretty amazing how many people that join us a day. So I'm really blessed with that. But thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, you make all of us feel so special when we come into that group, and you really highlight everybody that joins, especially the researchers and the podcasters, people that have shows. You really do make people feel special there, and it's just a very special place. And so I appreciate you, Darrell.
Y'all make me feel special too. So it's all a teamwork. But I enjoyed it very much. I always enjoyed being with you, Jessica. I think this is our third time, and I appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you. And I would love for you to come back. I know everybody in the chat is still saying, please bring him back.
Thanks for everybody that watched tonight. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
y'all make sure y'all subscribe to Jessica's show too. It's absolutely awesome. I love it. Watch it all the time. So thanks.
The Cryptid Huntress. I appreciate that, Darrell.
That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, Darrell, have a great night. And you tell Martin I want him to come on my show too. I've been telling him
I will
whenever
tell
he's ready.
That, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that.
Yes, I've had Barton on, and I need to get Joe and Jesse on too. So you talk to them, okay?
We'll do it. All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Have a great night, Darrell. Thank you so much for being here. Okay. Bye. All right, y'all. That was amazing. I have so much fun. I have so much fun doing this period. Okay. But Darrell's amazing. Don't forget that right after this show, After Hours has an amazing program set up, and they're going to take you on a journey for the next 3 hours. Tomorrow night on Off the Trails, I have Fred Roll of Subarctic Alaska Sasquatch on YouTube. Y'all know I've had him on the show about 3 times. He's one of the best, and we're going to talk about Sasquatch in Alaska. But for now, I'm headed off the trails. I'm so tired. I've been out researching, y'all. I will see y'all tomorrow night. I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and I will be back here tomorrow. Y'all have a good night.